Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to associate myself with your remarks, Mr. Rohrabacher, and I'd like to also thank you for holding this important hearing. An overwhelmingly Muslim country, Turkey, is a NATO ally, as Mr. Rohrabacher indicated, and it's long been a secular democracy. And but I too am concerned, as is Mr. Rohrabacher, about recent events that indicate a shift by Prime Minister Erdogan away from democratic ideals. And my concern would be, as that shift occurs and it reverts to more authoritarian rule, my concern is with some of the comments that I have seen made. One reportedly stated that democracy is like a bus ride. Once I get to my stop, I'm getting off. With that kind of commentary, and also with the use of strong arm tactics against opponents, this is what gives rise to concern. This approach was clearly demonstrated in the response to the 2013 protests, in which, and I understand the viewpoint there, but frankly it was treated as though the head of state regarded that as an illegitimate challenge. And it resorted to violence. It resorted to the dispersing of the crowds by violence. And a key target was the media. You had 153 journalists injured at that time and 39 detained by the police. Reporters Without Borders noted in their 2014 report on press freedom in the world that around 60 journalists were in detention in Turkey in 2013, including at least 28 held in connection with their work, making the country one of the world's biggest prisons for media personnel. In reaction to comments last year on Twitter regarding a corruption investigation involving his AKP party, Erdogan had an immediate response, and it was to vilify Twitter, stating, "There is now a menace which is called Twitter. To me, social media is the worst menace to society." A few days later, he moved to block all access to the site and followed shortly thereafter by banning access to YouTube. Freedom of religion is also threatened. According to the 2014 United States Commission on International Religious Freedom report, politically, religious freedom abuses are linked with the absence of democracy and the presence of abuses of other human rights, such as freedom of expression, association, and assembly. Religious minorities in Turkey suffer under strict controls governing their affairs, including their ability to choose their own church leaders, to manage and raise funds, own property, and even access to their historic sites of worship. The continued closure of the Orthodox Church's Halkith seminary by the Turkish government presents a fundamental threat to the ecumenical paracate. Despite optimistic claims by Turkish leaders in 2011 that the revised foundations law would allow all church properties to be returned within a year, a majority of properties remain confiscated. In many cases, the situation has actually gotten worse. Instead of returning them to their rightful owners, the Turkish Directorate General of Foundations approved the conversion of two Byzantine Orthodox churches previously expropriated by the Turkish government into mosques, and there is even legislation before the Turkish parliament to likewise convert the Hagia Sophia Church in Istanbul. Many believe these actions constitute a move to eradicate the presence of the Christian heritage in Turkey since it first arrived there 2,000 years ago. That is why I am pleased that a few weeks ago the committee passed my legislation, H.R. 4347, which will not only call on Turkey to return these properties, but also enact a report requirement to hold Turkish leaders accountable for progress on this issue. By committing ourselves to acting on such legislative measures and by holding hearings on the situation in Turkey, it is my hope that Congress will send a clear message that the Turkish government must renew its commitment to democracy and the basic human rights for all of its people. and this would be the foundation for a closer U.S.-Turkey relationship. And thank you again, Mr. Chairman.